it is. The family heirloom Minneapolis Moline. You can probably see. I put a new engine in. My neighbor came over and helped quite a bit. We finally got that engine put in. But today's video is going to be about the target animals, the target bucks that Amy and I are going to be hunting this year, and kind of what our game plan is and how we're looking at this season for hunting big bucks. And then if you stick around to the end, I've gotten a couple questions lately about how much land, how many acres does it take to grow big bucks, or how many years does it take to grow big bucks. And I kind of wanted to address what I feel is the number one mistake that hunters make when they're managing a property and they're trying to grow bucks to 3 or 4 or 5 years old. In my opinion, I don't know if it's the number one mistake, but it's a big mistake that hunters make when they're trying to grow big bucks. So stick around at the end and I'll go through that with you.
So the first buck I really want to talk about is probably the buck that Amy and I will be chasing the most just this year, and that's Gummy. See him last year in a couple photos here in December. And then there's Amy. She filmed him in November with her phone, so that's why the footage is kind of gnarly there. A Gummy showed up a lot last year during the late season. Here he is. I'm hunting some standing corn. I drove it over there so I could, for kind of a shooting lane. But he showed up several times late season last year. This is the late muzzleloader season. I had him out here at about, 125 yards. My first instinct was to pick up the gun and kill him. But he's just such a tough animal to hunt during the bow season. And I think this year, 2023, he's going to be 7 or 8 years old. So I let him go just because I wanted to hunt him one more year. And I watched him a lot last year during the late season, tried to put a pattern together on him. And I think I got a pretty good idea where he was bedded. So that's going to be the number one target buck for Amy and I this year. Then this summer, nice buck. Then this summer, I found a dead buck in the neighbor's pond. And I thought, oh boy, this looks a lot like Gummy. So I was kind of afraid that he might have gotten killed by EHD. But just the other day, in September 22nd, I got 2 pictures, and that's clearly him. So he'll be our number one target buck for this year. Another buck that I'll be targeting this year is this really beautiful, thick, tall buck. I've seen him many times during the bow season. You can see he had a big scar on his back there from scratching himself, I think, with his antlers. But I think this is muzzleloader season, late muzzleloader, when I was filming him. But I don't have a nickname for this buck. But when I saw him bow hunting a couple times, my first reaction was to pick up the bow. And then I just decided not to kill him. But I passed him up a couple times during the archery season, and I think he's definitely a buck that I'm going to be hunting this year. Yeah, there were several other smaller bucks out there with him that night in this cut corn. But that's definitely another buck that I'll be chasing this year. And then, of course, we're going to head into this drop tine buck. Here he is, this drop tine buck that I was chasing last year. And I passed him up, I want to say, 2 or 3 times. Now, just like Gummy, this drop tine buck, I didn't pass him up because he wasn't big enough. This is with my phone again. I just let him go through a ditch crossing here. But I didn't pass him up because he wasn't big enough. He's plenty big. I passed him up because I wanted to hunt him another year. So now we go into this buck that Amy calls Zebra. It's got kind of a really pretty face. It's going to come in focus here pretty quick. I think he was 3 or 4 last year. Here he's coming in. I'm filming him. This is also late season. I didn't get a camera to film until late season last year. That's why I don't have a lot of footage of a lot of the bucks that I'd like to talk about. Because I just didn't have a camera. But here he's gonna get downwind of me here. Oh, there he is. Busted. super tall buck. But we'll be chasing him again this year. And I don't have any pictures of drop tine buck or that busted up buck I showed you a minute ago, or this buck we call zebra. We don't have any pictures of them yet. So we'll see if they show up. With EHD hanging around, we just don't know what's going to happen. Next up is this buck that I call Kaminsky. And last year, I think he was 4 or 5. And I passed him up too. Same thing. He's big enough. He's mature. But that's not why I passed him up. Same with Drop Tine Buck and Gummy. At this point in the season, when I was able to film these bucks, I had already shot 2 bucks during the season. I shot Ranger October 28th, and then I shot No Name Buck, and I think that was November 21st. So part of me is like, I just don't want to be greedy. Let them go to next year. I can hunt these bucks again next year. Maybe Lily will get a shot at one of them during late muzzleloader. She's going to draw, or she did draw a late muzzleloader tag this year, our daughter Lily. Maybe Amy will see them. So part of the reason why I'm letting these bucks go is just I want the enjoyment of hunting them another year. And I didn't see the need that I had to shoot 3 bucks last year. So, but he's a beautiful buck. Look at that. That's just a nice, perfect racked 10-pointer there. So we'll see what he turns out to be this year. Again, that was late season last year. So if EHD didn't kill him, he looks like he's pretty healthy there. Let's hope he makes it. So that's it for the bucks that Amy and I are going to be hunting. This is now what I call the cabin farm. And this is last year, this really high, tall, mainframe 10-pointer. I filmed him. I didn't film him getting up out of his bed, but I watched him stand up right out of his bed into some edge bedding cover that I put in the year before. Same thing. This is late muzzleloader. I could have killed him right there, but I let him go. Lily has a late muzzleloader tag this year. Amy can late muzzleloader hunt. Here he is again, out in some cut corn out there. But I have hunters on that farm this year, so hopefully they'll get a chance at him. And he's back. He's a little bit bigger. He's a little bit bigger than he was last year. I think he was 4 last year, 4 years old. So this year he went from a 4-year-old to a 5-year-old. And I'm just getting pictures of him almost every other day. There's some coming up here. He's in a mock scrape here, late September. There he is coming out of that scrape, the 26th of September. But I'm getting him a lot going back into his bedding area, but we'll save him for the hunters. And there's also this big 10-pointer that's on that farm too. So I haven't pulled cameras or anything on that farm for quite a while. So I'll probably do another card pull here. I don't know, a couple, 2-3 weeks when the hunters show up. Here's this tall, thick 8-pointer. I also filmed him last year late muzzleloader hunting on the cabin farm. It'd be interesting to see what he turns into. A lot of mass, pretty good height. He's in some cut corn. You can see my electric fence there in the background. The electric fence is pulled down. See, they just walk right past it. But look at that. He's a pretty nice buck. So we'll see if he shows up this year. He hasn't showed up yet, but like I said, I have like 4 cameras on that farm, and I only check cameras 1 time. So we'll see what happens. So I just wanted to end that part of the video back here on Gummy a little bit here. But we also got permission to hunt a new farm this year. And I'm sure there's some bucks that I don't know about that'll show up. So we'll see what happens. But pretty excited. Those are kind of like the target bucks that I have in the back of my mind. But it seems like with the good habitat and late season food and corn and beans and stuff, we always pick up 1 or 2 more bucks.
I think that tire was a little low. But thanks for sticking around. I really wanted to cover what I feel is a big mistake that a lot of hunters make each fall. And that is they concentrate so hard on the current season that they forget to plan and really think about next year in the year after, and 3 and 4 years from now. So for example, I talk about harvesting does and why it's important to harvest does to create space on your property so that when bucks are being dispersed from their maternal home range, they have a place to set up shop on your property. So many hunters are fixated on the current year that they're afraid to shoot 1 or 2 or 3 does, because the thought process is, if I shoot 1 or 2 or 3 does on my farm, then I won't have any bucks coming into my farm and looking for does during the rut, because they're fixated on that 1 3 or 4 year old that's in the neighborhood that everybody's trying to kill, and they're wanting to do it this year. And I get that, I do. But if you have 1 mature buck to hunt, and you have 80 acres or 120 acres, or even if you have 200 acres, you got to understand that that buck's home range is probably 600 acres or 1,000 acres, maybe even a little more, and there's probably 4 or 5 or 6 or a dozen other hunters that are trying to kill that same buck. So if you want to be a consistent big buck killer, I think one of the most important things you can do is constantly plan 2, 3, 4, and 5 years out. Constantly. The best habitat, the best food, supplemental food with food plots that peaks during the hunting season, creating space by harvesting does. That's a big one that people get confused or get hung up on, because they're fixated on the current year and that 1 or 2 bucks that they're willing to shoot in their area. They're afraid to shoot 1 or 2 or 3 does on their 40 acres or on their 80 acres, because the thought process is, if I kill 1 or 2 or 3 does, I'm putting some pressure on my property, plus when the rut comes around, these bucks aren't going to come to my property looking for does. And I just don't think that's how it works, for starters. And secondly, you're not looking forward, you're not looking down 2 or 3 or 4 years down the road in planning to be able to, okay, next spring and next fall, or even this fall, right now when the season's going on, am I going to be able to attract bucks that are dispersing from 4, 5, 6 miles around? Am I going to be able to track those bucks to my property and have them set up home range on my property, so that 3 and 4 years from now instead of having 1 buck in the neighborhood that everyone's trying to kill, maybe we have 3 or 4 or 5 mature bucks in the neighborhood. And I really think that that's a key difference between the guys who are successfully killing bucks year in and year out, is they have 3 or 4 or 5 to hunt, compared to the guys that have 1 buck to hunt and they're competing for that 1 buck with a dozen other hunters. So you have to continually look down the road, 3, 4 years, 5 years down the road, if you want to grow big bucks by attracting them and protecting them on your property. Another thing that we do as hunters is we get so fixated on the current year, again on that 1 buck that we have trail cam pictures of at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I use that as an example because that's actually a very common scenario. But we get so fixated on that 1 buck that we want to kill, the 1 buck that we're able to kill on our property, that we probably hunt too aggressively. We put a lot of pressure on our property. And then I talked about in an earlier video on, are we willing to sacrifice, let's say, not hunting the prime gun season in our area? Are we willing to sacrifice not hunting that so that we can put less pressure on our property, so that now maybe there's a chance that that 2 and 3 year old that we've been letting go during the hunting season, maybe he'll stay on our property and he won't get killed by a different gun hunter. So I think just ending this video up, if you really want to be successful at consistently killing big bucks year in and year out, you can't concentrate just on this year. Absolutely, starting tomorrow our season opens and I'll be concentrating on this year, but not solely. Every single day when I'm in my stand, I'm thinking, how can I make my property better? When I'm walking into my stands, if I bump a deer, I'm thinking, okay, this stand's got to get moved. This blind's got to get moved. My access has to change. If I'm on stand, a deer are getting downwind of me and they're bumping me, how am I going to move this stand? Maybe I need to abandon this stand so I put less hunting pressure on my property, not just for this year, but bucks can disperse from other areas, and bucks can find my property and say, hey, this is great habitat, there's awesome food here, there's enough space for me because I don't want to be around 30 or 40 does nonstop, and there's a lack of human hunting pressure on this property, so I'm going to stay. Now, I don't think deer actually think like that. Us humans think like that, but deer just react to stimulus. So they react to, hey, there's good habitat, there's good food, and I don't want to be bothered. I'm not getting bumped nonstop by hunters. So not only is that going to make your current hunting season better by all those things I just talked about, but if you really concentrate on how is my current hunting season affecting 2 and 3 and 4 years down the road, you'll be a more consistent hunter of big mature whitetails. Well, as I said earlier, my season opens tomorrow, so Amy and I will be hitting at it, and good luck to anybody out there whose season also opens tomorrow, and hopefully it's going good for you if your season has already opened.